Hello and welcome, and thank you for attending today's demonstration webinar on managing enterprise risk with passwordless authentication and encryption. Before we get started this afternoon, I have a few logistics to go over before we really get into the meat of the presentation. So first of all, today's webinar is a follow-up on our last webinar on managing enterprise small to mid-sized enterprise risk for IT security. A small summary will be provided for those who missed that later in the presentation. Today's webinar will be recorded and distributed as part of the follow-up email, as always. We encourage you to submit your questions below using the questions and answer button. That way we can get to them at the end of the presentation. And please fill in the survey at the end of the presentation. This way we can use your feedback to provide better quality webinars in the future. I'd like to take a second to thank our panelists for attending today. Gary McCracken, our CISO and VP of Technology. He will be summarizing the previous webinar that this webinar is follow-up to, as well as sharing a few thoughts. And Raj, a pre-sales engineer here at WinMagic, will be guiding us through the passwordless demo and encryption demos that are available for us today. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Gary.
Thank you, Graham. For those of you who didn't attend the previous webinar, we had a panel and we discussed how a small to medium-sized enterprise can manage risk. And we used WinMagic as an example. At WinMagic, we have a security committee that does risk assessments and then mandates security controls to mitigate those risks that we find. But the bottom line is our job is to find a way to say yes to new requests for new information systems and new apps. And we want to try to find a way to say yes that is safe and secure. Now we know that our users aren't always putting security first. They have other considerations. So we're not naive enough to think that security is the #1 thing on their minds. They have a job to get done, and if the mitigation or the control or whatever you need to do for security is too onerous, they'll find a way to get around it. So user experience and enterprise manageability is also very top of mind for the security committee because it has to be workable and practical too. So we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago when the last webinar was, we talked about how we use one platform to manage both our endpoint encryption and our web authentication needs. And we're on a journey, 2 good concrete steps already. Today, we'll just demonstrate some of the things we're already doing, and I'm using most of these things myself, and some of the things that we're just starting to deploy at WinMagic on our journey. Today, we'll start with sort of a day in the life of a user. We'll start with demonstrating pre-boot authentication using multi-factor authentication using the TPM of single sign-on into Windows. Then we'll show, this not particularly in this order, we'll show passwordless authentication into our Cisco VPN, as well as passwordless authentication into Microsoft Office 365. This is one of the biggest mitigations we did quite a while back, was that multi-factor authentication to Office 365. Business email compromise is a big current threat today, and multi-factor authentication is a must, #1 mitigation to address that. We'll also show, or Raris will show anyway, a 2-step login to Salesforce. Salesforce has mandated that by February 2022 that you'll have to use some kind of multi-factor authentication. So we're getting ahead of the game with that and using SecureDoc passwordless authentication. Raris is also going to show you something new we've been working on that I talked about a couple weeks ago, and that's using biometrics for authentication to our FIDO authenticator. Anyway, and then we'll finish up with a quick demo on the SecureDoc encryption management console. So we've got a full demo ahead of us, so I'm going to turn over to Raris to show us.
All right. Well, thank you, Gary, for introduction, and Graham as well. So allow me to start sharing my screen. All right, we should be good. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us today. Exactly as following Gary's introduction, in this webinar, we're going to showcase how WinMagic employees are using a typical day in the office, and it's going to showcase how we encompass encryption and multiple authentication scenarios supported by our SecureDoc software suite. So we're going to start with a pre-boot, gaining access to our endpoint, our computer, which of course they run our full disk encryption solution and protection, and as well our SecureDoc passwordless authentication protection. We strongly feel like this is a strong way to protect all credentials for many, or if not all, small and medium-sized businesses like ours, right? So what follows, it's a pre-recorded demo. I put together all the experience mentioned earlier. It captures accurately the entire sequence of events. And I'm going to pause a little bit between windows, between clips, so I can explain a bit more and provide some more context, right? So here we go. This, as you can see, is I booted up my computer, and here I'm presented with WinMagic's SecureDoc login screen. This is what we call SecureDoc pre-boot authentication. At this stage, the screen prevents anything being read from the hard disk, including, of course, the operating system, that until a user is providing valid authentication credentials, right? So here we are going to key in an Active Directory user account, followed by a 6-digit PIN code, right? So again, this is not a password. We do not want to expose our AD credentials whatsoever. So we authenticated successfully at this point. And so this 6-digit code is our part of introducing our multi-factor type of authentication, right? And right now, what you are about to see, the moment now we will unlock the computer, we actually we are delivering to our credentials module, part of our SecureDoc agent, ability to perform a single sign-on process. So in other words, the AD credentials are in a way tied in with the entire credentials module, and we're able to leverage that behind the scenes, if you will. So I'm going to kind of stop in here so you actually see that experience. Like I said, there's no shorted video. Here's pretty much the real life experience that the user has. So of course, the computer is going to take some time in here. And here we go. So full single sign-on process is in place, right? Our module credential provider, it completely supports any AD-related password synchronization required with a expiration password or credential setting, right? Now, I'm going to just point your attention right now to the messages that are going to brief show up in here, where our SecureDoc pretty much reminds the user that the entire pre-boot authentication that has been executed earlier, it's actually protected as well by a TPM module, right? And of course, at this time, we also had a successful handshake with the SES server, and meaning that we dial home with the SES server. So then for us to see that indeed, if there are any policies that were pushed by the sysadmin, right now is the time that actually the endpoint learns about any possible changes in the configuration, right? So right now, that authenticated in the device, we are now authenticated legit account, user account, and we are now ready to start our workday, right? So then first things that we need to do is to access our emails, right? So for that, I'm going to showcase both experience that one can have using the desktop application or the web browser experience, right? So the protection for this, this is now you're going to see in full display our SecureDoc passwordless authentication protection, right? So our entire authentication here is based on strictly on this FIDO2 process, right? So what is SecureDoc it's ease of use, privacy and security, and standardization, keyword. So standardization is a big thing, right? So here we go now. That was a bit of a context about the secure passwordless authentication. And we are now about, I'm gonna start rolling the clip for the authentication on Outlook. First thing, we're gonna showcase the presence of a fingerprint reader. So this device, it's capable to use biometrics. And with that validation in place, now we start Outlook. So of course, first part of the authentication, it's, again, I guess I'm gonna just wait for a while here. I don't wanna do forward FNA at all. So of course, the client is trying to authenticate, and here we go. This is authentication embedded in Microsoft Office 365. And of course, it's asking for a security key because it's configured that way. And here we are now, this is our secure password authentication. And I'm gonna, here I just swapped my finger, and indeed I just got authenticated, right? So this is how easy, and again, remember I was just saying earlier, the FIDO2 project, it was like having those core ideas in place, right? Like ease of use, privacy, security, and here we are. So we are now authenticated. We're just validating that we are connected with our Exchange Office 365 server. And now we're gonna roll and gonna showcase the other experience. This is, let's pretend that this is a loaner, might not have now an Outlook, right? It's pretty much nowadays, it could happen. So we are gonna do the browsing experience. Here, I'm just starting the session in private mode to make sure that there are no stored cookies whatsoever. We're gonna try to authenticate through the URL in there. Same authentication process. And our authenticator, once again, kicks in right here. Swiping the finger. This is by standard definition of how FIDO2 is supposed to happen. A user presence is required, right? So when you have a biometric capable device, you either kind of use a fingerprint reader, or a biometric camera, or if you have none of that available, you'll have to kind of click a confirm message type of thing. So again, the idea is to probe for the user presence. So here, we're just gonna call on our client user interface to validate indeed the information about this website that we just accessed earlier, right? And we had a FIDO2 protocol and of course TPM protection, and with those audit-like information, right? So now that we have the Outlook experience, so we read our emails successfully, and we're now ready to do our next important tasks with, we all know it's CRM related tasks, right? So here I go with accessing our Salesforce. As a reminder with what Gary was saying, Salesforce, they will fully implement it to all of their accounts by 2020, all their customers, the MFA implementation. But for now, it's important for you to see, for me to explain a bit, the big difference that you're about to see right now. Salesforce, for now, only implemented the MFA authentication using the CTAP1 protocol, which is U2F, right? Unified two-factor security. So it's still a fully cryptographic authentication protocol, but this U2F works in conjunction with the need of a user to type in a username and password. So that has been my intro here, and let's actually see this live. So as I was saying, CTAP1 version requires a username and password. We are going to do that. But now our authenticator kicks in and provides the same full functionalities, as in biometrics reading and ability to protect that information against the TPM module present on this device, right? So here we are in. We're going to do the same validation quickly with our user interface and underlining the differences once again with the fact that here we just access Salesforce. It's a web service, which is only leveraging the U2F functionalities, but our protection kicks in behind the TPM as well. And of course, with the audit-like information, if you will, right? So this was our CRM experience. And now, moving forward, we know that we are gonna, pretty much we need to access, for example, some personal files, but they are all present in our network shares, right? So with no further ado, we need to access our VPN connection, right? So here, we are leveraging the idea. So I'm just gonna let the clip go run its course right here, validating indeed there is no connection. And I'm gonna resume my talking. Well, actually you're gonna see right now our attempt of connection. Okay, so here we go. So what is happening right here is pretty much we have a VPN relationship. So our connection, again, our ultimate goal throughout this entire experience is to never expose our credentials, domain AD credentials. So the way we went about this, it's actually using a certificate-based enrollment process, leveraging once again the presence of the TPM, and then creating a virtual smart card, right? So this is exactly what we are actually doing now. We are authenticating against, we're using a different set of PIN code that we're gonna actually authenticate against the TPM, releasing the smart card. And here we are, no password whatsoever here as part of our full experience, right? So, okay, now we are connected. And then of course we are, we're gonna confirm that we had our access granted to the network, corporate network. We are now able to retrieve, upload, download whatever files we need to do at this point. All right. So now that we've seen the end user experience, we want to know how IT administrators are being able to manage the environment and have a clear understanding of the status of the deploy assets, right? So for that, here we are. I'm introducing our SecureDoc Web Console, web-based application, of course. So with this tool, admins can, once they authenticate, then they're gonna be able to, first of all, assess right away in the system management monitoring panel. Administrators will have an understanding of how well, or overall how SD Connect servers are performing, right? So you can have a multitude of, in this instance, is just one SES server, and pretty much, there is a collection, performance statistics collection every minute, which is stored and exposed in here. So pretty much overall, there are information about, how many, pretty much the back and forth between the endpoints and the server, and overall the uptime status of the service, and so on, right? Then the moment afterwards, we are having an idea about, here we are looking at the devices, right? So devices in this panel, they are all information about any device that has or had SecureDoc installed in it, right? So then pretty much just, as you can see, offers an information about the computer name, with the important encryption status, full versus partially encrypted. Last time that device communicated, dial home with the server, make and model, and pretty much operating system version, and so on. As you can see here, we have pretty much a bunch of Windows, majority of them, but there are some Linux devices as well, like Mac OS, if for this particular case. Now, if an admin needs to dive deeper and then actually learn about more about, possibly in a troubleshooting scenario for a specific device information, you can, by clicking on a device, actually you have access now of some more in-depth details and information on the endpoint level, right? So there are like admins are presented with 5 tabs, from general information about the device, like once again, the type of encryption. In this particular case, you see it's a BitLocker machine. But once again, operating systems version, but then you can find out about information about the disks. So the drives tab will provide that information. And like I said, in case of a deep troubleshooting sessions, logs, audit logs, that type of information, right? So since our solution is, it's a pretty universal, OS agnostic and device agnostic, in the same single pane of glass of console, you are able to see any cloud devices you might have out there, right? So you can, in case you have a public CSP provider like AWS or Azure, or hyperconverged deployments like Scale, Nutanix, or private clouds like VMware and Hyper-Vs, no matter what, if you have any cloud VM in there, and which require encryption and protection, having our secure agent present in those VMs will provide the same type of centralized information, presence of the region, and so on, right? Another useful information, of course, goes without saying, the compliance, right? So it's this is pretty handy for admins, especially when they are kickstarting a full encryption project, right? Where they really want to know where they at with the overall devices in their environment, because what you see in here, they're actually the sum of all the devices part of the Active Directory, because we tie into the Active Directory structure, and we're able to pull all information about all the computers present in the domain, right? So in this particular case, you will see that in this image captures a 41% compliance status of this environment, right? So what you see with the question mark in there are computers that are in the domain, but not running secure.agent. So that gives a bit a good bearing for an admin, knowing exactly deliverables of the projects are pretty much real time, right? And of course, reports. What can you do without reports? Pretty much nothing. So all reporting in Secure Enterprise Service are produced by and viewable only within the web browser-based console. So the panel consists in a series of pie charts, bar and graphs, as you can see. They provide a graphical understanding. It's just for ease of use. You can click on a certain pie chart and then automatically will direct you to a specific, on that particular report that you hover over the mouse over the chart, but you can also pull whatever manual reports. Like there are a bunch of reports, as you can see, but for the purpose of this webinar, here we're going to see like a report for the, pertaining the encryption status, right? So we are able right now, this is pretty much the report for the the encrypted devices. So of course, there is full control as in filtering any sorting that might be needed at this point. And once that is done, if it's easier for the IT personnel to actually export that report and take their time to use it in different ways than staring at the screen, then of course they can do that very well, right? So pretty much in summary, what we've shown today is the end user experience from logging on the device, pre-boot authentication and all of that. All the way to the applications. In our case, of course, it was a range of the desktop application as well web applications, right? We also shown how the administrators can manage this solution from the use of the web console. And now I would like to turn this back to Gary.
Thank you, Rares, for the demonstration, and I hope the audience found that interesting and useful. Our call to action today is, let us ease you into the passwordless world. So please contact us on one of those things on the screen there. And we're looking forward to, assisting you on your passwordless journey, and a journey that WinMagic is sort of internally is already, well on its way. We did have some questions come in, and let me see if Rares, you're up for one or two here.
Oh, mama.
Here's one. It's regarding configuration and what's involved in configuring a security key on one of those accounts like Salesforce or Outlook.
Oh, I see. Great question. Great question. Yes, indeed. So the beauty of it, again, I can't help myself going back into the key deliverables of the entire FIDO2 project. It's standardization. So pretty much any web service out there that it's embracing and actually tries to offer a web authentication process, it's very easy to pretty much, it's for Salesforce, they go about this by simply stating it's a requirement of an MFA registration key or Microsoft 365, the new name. They also have the concept of security information. So once you navigate to that account configuration part, there is simple, for example, Microsoft 365, I have to be honest, by far is the best implemented way so far. Simply, you just request the idea of adding a security key, and pretty much the browser redirects, it's looking for a FIDO authenticator. And here we come in place. Secure.passwordless authentication is pretty much triggered by the web interface. And it's pretty much, it's as simple as acknowledging the prompts that secure.passwordless authentication brings along, which in short is asking for the user presence, confirm or fingerprinting or biometricing something. Then that particular security key is being generated locally on the device, stored, and then also the public key, of course, sent over to the web service, the server side. And pretty much that was it. So that is how easy is adding the security key in that said web service is. As simple as maybe up to, I don't know, 30 seconds or so.
Thank you.
Sure.
You mentioned TPM quite a few times through the demo. So what is a TPM and why is it important?
Wow, yeah. Thank you, Gary. I made the it's a big assumption I should never made. Yes, TPM, it's pretty much the acronym and stands for a Trusted Platform Module. So pretty much so what it is, it's a dedicated microcontroller present, which is physically present on the motherboard of nowadays computers. And its sole job is to provide the hardware. It integrates cryptographic functionality, and with the ultimate scope of sealing sensitive information from, for example, in case of BitLocker encryption, for example, it stores the disk volume key, so it's sealed against it. So only a successful authentication against the TPM module, that key is exposed, released from the TPM shield. The same, in our experience, our pre-boot authentication, the credentials that the 6-digit code that I did at the pre-boot, the virtual smart card sequence, our security key as well, as you see. So since they are by definition cryptographic information, cryptographic keys, they are also protected by this famous trusted platform module. I hope this answered the question.
We only have a minute left, but I have a related question that came in on the chat line that's very similar to what you were just answering. This question is, how does the boot logon work with start before login for VPN access? If the device is not connected to AD, how does it verify its account? So this really, I think, has to do with how we do, in this particular example, the pre-boot authentication and how it single signs on.
Correct. Exactly. It's like thank you for the audience question. It's exactly fits perfectly in the idea that the pre-boot information logon, that key information login, it's protected at that point within the TPM. So indeed, we have ways to kind of put it like a time bomb on the 6-digit PIN code. So it's fully configurable. You can have it no cashed in, but the idea is that 6-digit, in our case, what we showcased during the webinar, this is a 6-digit code that pretty much unlocks the TPM, right? So then the TPM releases the required information, pretty much unlocks the disks and provides the boot loading information to the operating system.
Great, and so it's a local authentication, because the other part of the question is how could we do that before VPN access? It's
right, indeed.
So the local authentication. We don't need VPN access to sign into the.
Correct. No need for that in that particular exercise, because I should have mentioned this, I guess, in one point. We wanted to reflect the reality that is happening right now with more than 1 year of people in workforce working pretty much remotely. So we are in a similar situation. So indeed, in this particular scenario, the network presence, it's not a condition to unlock the computer, right? But I have to say that, since we're talking about this, back to when I was saying the cloud VM machines, you can leverage a network brokered authentication. But again, this was completely outside of the theme of this webinar, but know that our agent indeed can, if configured that way, desire to act that way, can leverage a network presence, and that through that network presence, a specific one-time crypto key issued by the STS server can unlock for example, a cloud VM machine, right? Where user interaction is pretty much non-existent, right?
Great. So basically, many different types of solutions for many different types of use cases.
You got it. That's it. Very well said.
I guess we're beyond our time now, and I think we need to probably wrap up and thank everyone for coming.
You're taking all the fun away, Gary.
But if there are any other follow-up questions, please submit them, and we'll get back to you on one-to-one.
Well, I must say thank you for everyone being kind enough to bear with my very first webinar ever.
And I know our host was having some internet difficulties, so I don't know if they're going to close it off for us or not. Graham, do you have anything to say? No, well, then it looks like our host is having internet problems, so I'm going to say goodbye and thank you, everyone.